Well, damn, this is a weird spot to be again. Hi, everyone. It's been like 7 months? Yeah. It's been a little bit since I've been here, and I've had a lot going on with school and just with the summer and just everything that was going on. I kind of sucked at the whole YouTube thing, and I'm really sorry, but I guess on a better note, I'm back. So, hi. How's everyone doing? It's been a minute. It's really been a minute. So first thing I want to say is that I love you guys and I've missed everyone like a lot. Like the idea of coming back has been like in my mind for the past 2 weeks because I am on break now from school, and so I knew like literally got back 2 days ago, did my research last night, and I'm back again for another video. So I've been really looking forward to this for a while and kind of getting to speak to you guys again. So I thought that it would be best if I kind of gave myself time to really adjust to school now that we're kind of back to a more normal lifestyle. So yeah, but since I'm on break, I thought I would just put out a bunch of content for you guys, and I have a lot of videos that I've been planning, that I've been like thinking about since I was at school, and I have like a little notes app filled with just a bunch of video ideas that I kind of want to get through in the next month while I'm home. But today's case is actually something that I have been thinking about for the past month, and the second that I watched this movie, that I'll get into in 1 second, I knew that I had to make a video on this person, and so that is kind of what inspired today's video. So today's case is quite old. It's actually from the 1980s. So a little backstory to how I found this case. While I was away at school, I obviously made some really, really amazing friends, and I love each and every one of them, but one in particular, their name is Bobby, wanted me to watch the film Paris is Burning, and if you guys don't know what that is, it's an amazing documentary which focuses on ball culture in New York City at the time of like the 80s and 90s, when it was really at its peak. And I will explain what a ball is later when it gets to that time of the video. But Paris is Burning is basically the docuseries that follows a bunch of queer individuals. Some of them are transgender, some of them are drag queens, some of them are just gay, and it follows them through them competing in these balls. So in the film, you are introduced to a lot of subjects like I mentioned, and tragically, about 90% of the subjects don't live past the next 5 years of their life, whether it's due to complications of AIDS, drug use, or violence. A lot of these individuals succumb to the lifestyle that they were living, which is really tragic. But today we're going to focus on one person specifically, and her name is Venus Xtravaganza. She was a beautiful woman whose light was burned out way too early in her life. But before we focus on what happened to her, I kind of want to explain who Venus was as a person and her story, as I found it really interesting when I was watching the film. So Venus was born in Jersey City, New Jersey in 1965 on May 22nd. She had 4 other brothers, and not much is really known about Venus's like young adolescence between the ages of like birth to about 13. So we're kind of just gonna jump to when she was 13 to 14 years old. So around 13 to 14, Venus did begin to cross-dress in her room, as Venus was actually born a biological male. So she would cross-dress from male to female, and she would kind of perform in her room, and she would kind of just embody what she viewed a woman as at this time. A little background information is needed. During the 70s and 80s, not much was known about what a transgender person was. People really didn't know what gender dysphoria was, and a lot of times transgender women would refer to themselves as transvestites, transsexuals, and also drag queens, which seems really strange because there's obviously, now we know a distinction between a drag queen and a transgender person, but at the time, and if you watch Paris is Burning, there's a lot of intersections where people that refer to themselves using she, her pronouns will also describe themselves as a drag queen, but say they also want to receive the sex change operation, or SRS. And it's very interesting and very bizarre to hear because, you know, nowadays we know there's a distinction, but at the time we didn't. So Venus couldn't really put into words what she was feeling, but she began cross-dressing at the time because it felt correct, obviously, as we now know she was a transgender woman, but at the time she didn't know what that meant. So Venus, you know, kind of began to experiment with her gender and learn more about herself, and she kind of realized that she didn't want to live her life as a male. And so eventually her family caught on to what she was doing as cross-dressing in her room, in order to avoid embarrassing them, because at the time, this was the 70s and 80s, it was a much more conservative time. Venus decided to leave her home of Jersey and travel to New York City, where I think she saw New York City as a safe haven for people who were like her, being in the LGBT community. So at age 14, in 1979, she left her home. Here, Venus met the house leader of Xtravaganza, which is a house in New York City that participates in ball culture. So basically what the houses are is, in the nightlife of the 80s and, well, 70s, 80s, and 90s, there were these houses, and actually the houses still do exist, it's just not as like big of a thing, but at the time they would throw these balls. And for those who don't know, I'm going to now explain what ball culture is. Ball culture is essentially a large event thrown by the gay community in like empty warehouses and just large areas where there'll be a set of judges basically judging different contestants on how they perform in a category. So for example, a couple of the categories would have been like realness, executive, butch. And so for example, for realness, the goal was to look as real as a biological woman, and these men would dress up as females, so basically drag. Executive is when these people, and it is boys and girls, like both people would compete in these. Executive, they would wear suits and they would perform basically as what I think an executive would be. In butch, they would dress as masculine as they could, and they would try to pass as like a very like straight man. So there were different categories that people would participate in. And the houses were basically like, if you think about it, different teams. If you like want to make it like, compare it to sports, they're like basically different teams, and each ball was like a game, and each different category they would send in their best players for that category to try to win a trophy. So that was basically ball culture summed up as best that I can in like the minute or two that I tried to do it. But if you want to read more about it, I definitely think it's a really interesting world, and obviously if you watch Paris is Burning, will explain it the best. But Venus says, so back to the House of Xtravaganza. So the House of Xtravaganza, which was a very well-known and respected house at the time, really liked Venus, and usually in order to be accepted into a house, you first have to compete in one of the balls and win one of the categories. However, since the group vibed, I guess, so much with Venus, they wanted her in their group, and they didn't care if she had won a trophy or not. So Venus was inducted into the House of Xtravaganza, which is where she got her last name of Xtravaganza. So when Venus originally moved to New York, right around the time that she joined this house, she met the owner of the house, Hector Xtravaganza. Venus said that Hector was the first gay man she had ever met in her whole life, which is kind of crazy to think now because gays are everywhere. But back then, I mean, there was a lot more people that were closeted, and you really only found, I feel like, out gay people in cities where there were so many people that you could kind of blend in and just live your life. And I think that's why Venus specifically wanted to go to a place like New York City, where she felt like there would be power in the anonymity that comes with living in a city. For Venus's 15th birthday, Hector decided to throw her a very extravagant party. And Venus said while she was there, she met so many beautiful transvestites and drag queens. Those are her words, not mine. And that's actually what solidified for her that she wanted to participate in ball culture and actually get the sex change operation that she had been thinking about for a while. By seeing people actually living the life that she wanted to live, it confirmed in her brain that this was the right choice for her. Sadly though, for most people in the ballroom culture, they were very, very impoverished, and in order to make these extravagant costumes that they wanted to perform in, they would have to find money in any way that they could, and sadly for a lot of the people working in survival sex work because they had no other way to make their money. Still, being gay and being openly transgender and all of these different things were very taboo at the time, and it was very hard to find a real job, and so a lot of these people would have to resort to sex work in order to pay their bills and in order to make any sort of money to survive. She said in the film Paris is Burning that she would use escorting services in order to find the men that she would then engage in sexual relations with in order to make money. She said they specifically chose her because she was so little and that she had light skin, blonde hair, and light eyes. She clearly fit a niche market that did really well, and so she knew that that was an easy way for her to make money, and honestly one of the only ways for her to make money in her own eyes. She said this made her very popular, as she thought men would be disturbed if they were to be with people that were much bigger than them, and so because of Venus's small size, a lot of people liked that. Venus in the film details one experience that she had while working with the escorting service. She says that one time when she was in the back seat of a car with a man, they were feeling each other up and he was playing with her breasts, and when he moved down her body, he felt that she had male genitalia still, and he was completely shocked as he didn't think that she had that down there. Immediately he began to freak out because he realized that Venus had been born a biological male. And so immediately he started using really heinous words like the F slur. He started calling her the F slur. He started accusing her of intentionally trying to give him HIV/AIDS, and he even said that he would kill her and threatened to like murder her for what she was doing. Luckily though, in the situation, she was able to, as she said, grab her purse and jump out the window, but for a lot of transgender women and drag queens at the time, this wasn't the same situation. A lot of them were sadly murdered during their times escorting, and unfortunately, Venus would not always be this lucky, and eventually her bad habits would end up catching up to her. Towards the end of her part in the documentary of Paris is Burning, Venus talks about how escorting is no longer something she does, and it's something that is in her past because she realizes, because of scary situations like this, that it is not a very safe endeavor for her to be doing. It makes it so much eerier when you think about what actually happens to Venus. At the end of the docuseries, so like they're wrapping up interviews for her, Venus is sitting on the bed in her home and she's talking about all the things she envisions for herself in the future. She really wanted to live her life the best way that she could, despite every obstacle being in her way. Some of the things she wanted to do was have her sex change operation. That was a big one for her. She wanted to be a complete woman in her eyes. She wanted to leave New York for somewhere far, far away where no one would know who she was and her story. And she wanted a husband to take care of her and make her happy. And as a job, she just wanted to model, something that kind of relates a lot to ball culture. So clearly she had the skills to be a model. It was just more so the actual getting there. That was the difficult part. But sadly, none of these goals would ever happen for Venus. And on December 25th, so Christmas Day of 1988, the body of a strangled transgender woman had been found underneath the bed of the Duchess Hotel in New York City. The police identified the body of being that of Venus Xtravaganza. And after finding a close friend of her, they wanted the friend, Angie Xtravaganza, to confirm that the body they found was that of Venus. Her body was found strangled and thrown underneath the bed at the Duchess Hotel like the person was trying to hide what they had done. The morgue determined that the body had been laying there for 4 days before anyone had found her. Angie Xtravaganza, the friend who had to confirm the body to the police, had to actually go tell the biological family of Venus's death because they were not in contact with Venus at this time, and so Angie had to kind of do all this by herself.
We used to get dressed together, call each other, and say what we were going to wear, and you know, she was like my right hand as far as I'm concerned. I miss her. Every time I go anywhere, I miss her. That was the main daughter of my house, in other words. But that's part of life as far as being a transsexual in New York City and surviving.
To this day, her killer is unknown. A lot of times the police don't really try with trans women when the crimes are enacted upon them, whether it's murder, rape, anything of the sort. A lot of the times police will actually accuse the woman of trying to trick the man, and a lot of times will completely overlook the woman and honestly say that the man is the victim. A lot of times they'll say that the trans woman is trying to trick the man into having sex with them. So sadly, the case was never really looked into that well, and to this day no one knows who did it, and sadly this is not a case where I think anyone will ever know what happened to Venus. There just is so many trans women, especially at the time, that were killed while doing sex work because they had no other way of survival, and it's just tragic that this isn't the only story that has happened to someone like Venus. This happens all the time to women, especially at the time, and even to this day, trans women are still killed for being transgender. And the police don't look into these cases because they don't see trans women on the same level as they do other women. Her body was buried in North Arlington, New Jersey, where she is originally from. At the end of the film, Angie Xtravaganza was kind of talking about her friend and what happened to her, and was basically delivering the information of like how she died. At the end of the documentary, they show us Angie, and they have her describe what happened to her friend Venus. And so one of the quotes that I thought was so impactful from Angie was, "Hey, but that's what being a transsexual in New York entails." Showing that so many women just had to accept the fact that they probably weren't going to live a long life, if not past 25. Venus didn't even make it to the age of 25, dying at 23, and for so many other people this was the case. The film Paris is Burning really stuck with me because there was so many very powerful and inspiring characters in the film. And they were able to take nothing and make something beautiful out of it. So many people were able to make these extravagant garments and these beautiful pieces of art, really, that they were able to then perform in. And it's just crazy to think that so many people in the film, whether it be from complications of AIDS, whether it be from drug use, whether it be from violence and murder, so many passed away. Sadly, Angie Xtravaganza died only a few years after the film was released, after her friend from AIDS complications. Hector Xtravaganza died in 1985, also from AIDS complications. I feel like the film does a really good job in the subtext of showing you the reality of people who were living with AIDS and how tragic of a life it really was. So now I kind of want to talk about the impact of Venus, and there's probably some things that you guys don't know about her, and you actually have probably heard her quotes and not even realized it. So many people will remember Venus as the beautiful soul that she was in the film Paris is Burning. And for many viewers of RuPaul's Drag Race, like myself, they will actually know a lot of her quotes. In the Paris is Burning documentary, there are so many quotes that are actually featured in RuPaul's Drag Race and used by the contestants during the reading challenge, as reading was also a part of the documentary where they explained what reading was. So I just kind of wanted to play a couple lines and see if you guys know them. So please comment down below if you guys have heard the lines that she's used. I mean, these are very popular lines that are still quoted to this day of RuPaul's Drag Race. So I'm very curious to see if you guys know any of them. So here you go.
Now you want to talk about reading? Let's talk about reading. What is wrong with you, Pedro? Are you going through it? You're going through some kind of psychological change in your life? Touch this skin, darling. Touch this skin, honey. Touch all of this skin. Okay? You just can't take it. You're just an overgrown orangutan.
Venus Xtravaganza has left such a mark on LGBT culture and the community as a whole that she will never be forgotten. And the film Paris is Burning has been able to memorialize her in a beautiful way, and I think that if you guys haven't seen the film, you definitely should give it a watch so you can kind of see who she was and see why she's such a captivating person and understand why I felt like I needed to make this video. I know my audience may not be big, but after hearing her story, I knew I had to get it to a wider audience, and I know that this is a true crime channel and there wasn't much true crime in this video, but I feel like as a person, she needed to be remembered, and her life was taken so young, so tragically, that it's horrible to think that this happens to so many other trans women across the country, even to this day. Research for this video was exceptionally hard, but I knew that I needed to make it because of that. It was really an interesting video to make, and I really liked learning a lot about Venus's life because she was such an inspirational person, living her authentic self even when the world was so against her and made it so impossible. So yeah, guys, I hope that you learned something from this video, and I hope that you take the time to go watch Paris is Burning. It's only around an hour long of a documentary, and it really does a beautiful job about encapsulating the nightlife New York City LGBT culture in the 1980s and 1970s. So yeah, guys, I'm back. I intend on making a lot more videos. I have a couple commentary videos coming out later where I want to talk about some important issues that have been boiling in my brain. I also will come back with a couple more true crime videos for you guys during this break. So I really hope you enjoyed the video. I hope you learned something. And yeah, don't forget to follow me on Instagram if you guys want to. I post pictures there, so when I'm not on YouTube, you'll see me there. And on Twitter, I like to talk to people a lot and interact with them, and I like to post like really dumb shit. But if you guys are interested in following me on either of those platforms, please do so. It would be really cool to interact with you guys more because I'm not always on YouTube, sadly. But I do intend on being here a little bit longer throughout this month. So I love you guys so much. Thank you for everything. Thank you for all the support that you guys have been giving me even when I'm not here. And I love you all. Bye.